All right, we're ready to go. We'll call the meeting to order. Jen, take roll, please.
Commissioner Corbin?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Waldner?
Here.
Commissioner Abraham?
Here.
Mayor Lindsay?
Here. You have attached the minutes of the March 30th meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 30th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You have before you tonight's agenda.
Move to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Appearances, acknowledgements, and correspondence. Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. Seeing none, we will move on to new business. Number one, peddler's license application for American Exteriors LLC. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to address that, or? Okay. All right, I've read through the information provided. Any questions or comments from anyone on commission?
They've been to town before, haven't
They
they?
have been to town before. I did chat with the PD today. It's not an entity that they are concerned about. They do have to go through this application process. The correspondence that we have had with them is that they plan on being in town probably only one day later this week. They will bring a team of several and pay their one-day fee and then let us know if they plan on additional dates.
Are they just gonna set up shop someplace? I'm looking at this no sales at door.
Door to door, but no sales at door. So they are going to, from my understanding, again, solicit interest, but there will be no,
Yeah, it looks like they're
Sales.
dropping off a flyer or a card saying, we do
it's still
this,
door to door.
but they're not actually
So
trying
they're
to
just
sell.
gonna do a door hanger and walk on.
That I don't know. Door to door, but no sales.
I wish they were here to explain that a little bit
Mhm.
more, you know, cause if they were door to door, I mean, you know, I guess for the other commissioners, we've had peddlers in the past that we've denied just because of their sales tactics of
Right.
coming into the houses and everything from.
I
using the-
recall one last spring, book salesman.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
But they've been here before,
This entity has been here before. I can't tell you when, but.
and we've
it has
had no
been here.
complaints.
I don't recall any complaints. I think they've been here at least 1 year previously and maybe more. I know, I remember seeing the name before. I'm sure I've
So it's a motion.
voted on them at least once.
I would make a motion to approve the peddler's license application for the American Exteriors LLC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number two, declare as surplus property, appoint appraisers, and set a bid date for transformers. And they are listed in here. Surplus transformers, 832.5 kVA, 16 pole mount, 8-phase single pad mount. Dennis, do you have anything to add to that, other than?
These are just transformers that we've taken down off some of our upgrade projects.
Hmm?
Basically, we need to get them out of our containment
Sounds good.
area, so we got room for new ones when they come in.
Very good. Questions?
These are good ones. We actually get paid for
They
these.
were working with, yeah, these should be able to sell all these.
Okay.
Bid process to know the bid
Yes.
date. We'll have to go through the bid process on these, please.
April 22nd.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to declare surplus property, transformers, and make said bid date for April 22nd at 10:30 a.m.
Appoint appraisers too, please. Corbin?
Appoint Jeremiah Corbin, Dennis Poppin, and Chad Comas as appraisers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, number three, discuss the airport fuel system. Okay, Chad, did you want to start with this, and Brenda, either one?
Okay.
Okay, go
First of
ahead.
all, I want to just pass out a couple pictures if you don't mind.
No, please do, because I tried doing that with mine earlier, and it wasn't working so well.
Also, I was gonna say, Morris had planned on being here, but he got really sick, so he didn't wanna pass that on. This is the existing fuel pumps out there.
Thank you.
And then also have a picture of the existing tanks.
Yeah,
Now,
that's-
the first two tanks, the ones that are clearly marked, one says avgas, one says jet fuel, those are the two tanks the city owns. The other tanks, the city doesn't own, they were part of a, from a few years ago,
That's what I-
SDSU sponsored, what do you call it?
These two here, city owns.
Yeah, the
I
first two in
assumed
the
that
picture
those
are
two, that they
the
did too.
ones the city owns.
Yep.
Anyway, those were, the other
So-
tanks belong to a project that had to do with, ethanol fuel in airplanes. That, they're privately owned and not ours.
Are they still in use?
No, they're not in use. They're empty. There's nothing in them.
Okay, so these two right here, the two tall ones then, are the ones that are not in use then?
Yes, there's actually three of them.
There's
There's two in the back and one here.
oh yeah, I see them now.
Yep, just
Yep.
these two are owned by the city.
Yes, yes.
So
So,
the-
but these two are empty?
Yeah, all three of them. This one too. They're all empty.
Okay.
They were all part of the ethanol
Okay,
So this
experiment thing.
experiment/grant project SDSU thing, they put tanks on the airport, but then the project didn't remove the tanks? And so now that's our responsibility to remove them?
They're privately owned. It's up to the person that owns them.
and
deal with it.
They rent space then, or how's that work?
I really don't know. They were there before we came and I don't
Okay,
really know what.
okay.
Just curious.
So that's something we need to check into, because
Yes.
I was assuming that all of these belong to the city,
No. they
to
do
the
not.
city.
Just
You know
the
what I'm
two.
saying?
I mean, it costs a lot
You'll
to have
find
a
there's,
tank sitting
there's a
there.
lot of strange things that have been done for years out there that
Okay,
aren't necessarily written down, not strange, but just, most people wouldn't consider it normal operations, but
yeah,
it was for years and years and years.
so. All right, Chad, do you want to take the lead on the discussions and that we had with the gentleman from KLJ?
Yeah, I can make a few comments, thank you.
Okay,
I believe about 3 years ago, the city purchased the fuel system, and ever since that time has been operating that fuel system. It's come to our attention recently that there's been more than minor issues with the fuel system, and Brenda can elaborate much, and the airport board can elaborate much more thoroughly than I can on that. So what we were trying, I was asked to look at a couple things, and what I tried to do was try to get some information so that the commission would have information ultimately to make informed decisions. But, and so a gentleman from KLJ who's worked in their field business for 25 years or so had come down and take a look at this on March 31st. And he, for a field visit, and he issued a letter and about a 6-page report talking about some different options and some things that he had observed from his expertise. And one of the first things that I think it's safe to say at the city, one of the first thing the city needs to decide, I suppose, is do you want to stay in the fuel business or not? You know, that's probably one. I'm just going to kind of summarize real briefly, and then there's probably a lot of discussion that you may want to have. And then if that's an affirmative and you do want to stay in the field business, I think part of the recommendations, the options talked about in this letter are, do you install a standalone new fuel system to the tune of about $280,000, or do you look to try to reuse some of these tanks and with some deficiencies in them, and then rectify those deficiencies, still having old tanks, but the idea is you rectify these deficiencies that are known, for maybe around $200,000. The tanks are about 30 years old. So that's kind of your second set of decisions, so to speak. And then I suppose a third one could be, you know, how soon do you do this? You know, and the airport board and the Riggins can attest to how quickly those things need to be decided. Now, I really went over a lot of things, just kind of cut, there's probably a lot of different decisions you want to make that you could make as well, but that is some initial information that I would provide. I will say that KLJ did recommend to put in a new system due to, you know, things they outlined in this report, with some of the unknowns and deficiencies in the age of the existing tank. That was their recommendation for the commission and the airport board to consider.
And also, I can throw this out there, when we were
Yes.
down for the South Dakota Airport Managers Conference in Sioux Falls, Vice in South Dakota was also looking into getting a fuel system. And they were repeatedly turned down because they were bringing up this $300,000 by the state to, you know, they were trying to get state funding to help with, to offset the costs. And they were throwing out $300,000, you know, bids out there, you know, things out there too. And one of the airport, or the board members, the South Dakota board member, he said he looked into a company out of Wisconsin that actually makes these prefabricated fueling systems for $80,000. So, that's an option I'm gonna look into. I, found out the name of them, I just need to call them and talk to them. This board member, he said he actually did talk to a gentleman, a sales gentleman from this company, and that's what they quoted him. And he was pretty specific about asking questions. So I will check into this and I will see what happens.
Okay.
So we might not be looking at that high of a price. I just need to do more digging.
Well, one of the things in that, you know, that I took away from it, and in fact, a couple of different things in that I took away from it was a lot of FAA rules and regulations have changed in the last 30 years. And some of the things in that they allowed 30 years ago and that they don't allow now. And then he made one comment that I thought was interesting in that. He says, now, keep in mind, the fuel system is on city property and the city is ultimately responsible for what happens. But the other thing that he made is, once you touch it, you are required by federal law to bring it to current federal standards. And so, one of the things that he did do, and I think you took the picture here after he filled the hole in, but he did bring a shovel along and he dug down in by those pipes. He wanted to see if the pipes were indeed metal all the way from the tanks over to the pumps. He said someone had thought that maybe there was plastic pipe underground. Well, he dug down a couple feet and it was still all metal. So, but the other thing that he questioned was that these appear to be not double-walled pipe, but single-wall pipe. And then the question is when you have single-wall pipe underground, is there a possibility that the ground is contaminated underneath there, and then you'll have to deal with that? From my experience, that's what happened to Subway. Black Hills Oil originally bought Subway. They came in, they took out, it wasn't Subway, they bought the Phillips 66 station. They came in, they took out the Phillips 66 station, the tanks had leaked, the ground was contaminated, they had to haul it all out. They hauled it all out east of town, paid a farmer out there, and it had to be, you know, tilled and rolled, you know, for like, I don't know how many years, 4 or 5 years. Then they had to put test wells in to make sure that there was no other contaminants there. And then Black Hills Oil asked to put in a convenience store. And they were told no tanks. So then that's how Subway came about. And they operated it for about 2.5 years. It didn't fit into their fuel and convenience store, and that's when they put it up for sale, and that's when we bought it. So, his question then was, is it if the pipes between there and the tanks were leaking, and that there may be some contamination there that has to be hauled out and dealt with. The other thing that he talked about, and I've used this as an example when I talk to people about running your tanks close to empty when you're driving your car down the road. Because if you take a glass of milk and you put Hershey's syrup in it and you stir it up, eventually it settles to the bottom. If you've got a full glass, you can't shake it without spilling it to get that on the bottom to move. But you drink that down 3/4 of the way and you can shake that glass and mix all that stuff up. Here, the tanks, it appears that they fill from the bottom. So when they
Pretty
come up,
standard with all tanks.
and so when they come in and they are filling, they are pushing fuel in and it's stirring up whatever's on the bottom of the tank. And then that goes out, and that to the filters, before it comes out of the pumps. The filters that we currently have on there are not the current approved filters.
Only on the jet one.
Only on the jet one?
Yes.
Okay. And so anyway, they're very expensive filters.
Only the jet one is proper or not proper?
Not proper.
Not proper.
Okay,
Because we couldn't get them.
okay.
So, you put the load on the filter system. The other things in that he talked about that are not currently up to code is there is a venting system on the top. And if you look on the one that says fill jet, and you look at the top, it has a coffee can on it. It's not supposed to be a coffee can. Okay? It's supposed to have a proper vent at the top of it, which it does not have. And there were some other things in that he mentioned and that, that are in here. And there's things in that they will not know until they start working on the system. So was your feeling that, Chad, that if they gave an estimate, that estimate would not be a concrete estimate? Because if they ran into something different, it would be an additional cost to take on.
Yeah, I would say I didn't, with the estimate of the 200,000, there's just so many unknowns, contaminated soil, and just unknowns. There's no records on this current system right now that the, Riggins could find from, and they inherited it, down the line as well. So there could be unknowns, significant contingencies, yeah.
Concern that I have is, having taught auto mechanics for 38 years, if I have an issue with my fuel system and that my car quits, I just coast off to the side of the road. But it does bother me to think that somebody may, have a situation where they had a fuel issue and there's no side of the road at 3,000 feet. They've got to find someplace to come down. I'm also not excited about the idea of spending $200,000 possibly and finding unknowns that could be a surprise. Where was that system that they just put in?
Moab, I think, North Dakota,
Okay.
standalone.
And it's a standalone, and it meets all the latest FAA codes. That one was a had two 12,000 gallon tanks. It had the, instead of a drag it across the parking lot like we have here and hang it on 2 wheels, it has a recoil system in it that the system doesn't even open. Oh yeah, there we go. Until you swipe your credit card. Okay, you swipe your credit card, now it'll let you open the doors. Pull the hoses out, fuel your plane, and then electronically recoils it back, you shut the doors, the system locks. So, and this one's a little different than the picture that he had. The one he had two of them. And anyway, that was around $250. And if I remember what he said.
Yeah, but that
And
was
then,
completely everything.
no, well, I could stand totally corrected, but it was with site preparation and, some additional, groundwork and everything else that was being done. But double wall construction with monitors in between, so they can tell if there's a leak. It doesn't have to have a containment center. It sits on a flat slab of concrete. So, in my mind, I don't have all the answers yet. There's still a lot of questions in that we want to get answered. But the other thing that concerned me was the time frame. If we decided we were going to buy one today, you still would not have it at the airport for 7 or 8 months. So the concern, or what I would like to do is start the process, find out what's out there, find out what our requirements and that are for a new system, see what kind of system costs and that other airports have put in, and be looking at, in my mind, going with a totally new system to be good for the next 30 years, rather than spending 3/4 of what we're talking about, and then 5 years from now have to do something different. So,
Buy new tanks, because he said the tanks they were put in
86.
86 to 88.
Yep.
And they're pretty much at their limit. And he said in about 3 years, you'll have to replace them anyway.
So does the airport board have a recommendation, or do we making all these decisions?
Well, this is something we've been ongoing talking about, and therefore, the thing is, last
When
summer.
you said ongoing, like how long?
I'm sorry?
How long have you been talking about this?
Off and on
That's my question.
since last August, when we almost failed the pump inspection.
I guess
Because
that, I'm sorry, I guess that's the concern the board has, if it fails inspection and then we're unable to provide fuel, then that can put a lot of local pilots in a conundrum, so to speak, if they're not able to procure fuel locally.
Not to mention us who have, hundreds of students throughout the year,
And that's another concern, and I've expressed it to Tim when I asked him, to come to the meeting tonight. We have between 30 to 35 planes that call Madison home and rent hangar space in that, or rent ground space for their hangars from the city. If we don't have one good system, we will have 30 poor systems, because everybody's going to have fuel for their plane some way or another, so that they are able to work on it out here if they need to, be able to take off and go to an airport where they can get fuel. And my question is do we, and Randy's not here now, but Randy was out there as well. At least if you have one good fuel system that everybody knows, trusts, and can rely on, that's where they're going to get their fuel. Otherwise, we could have 30 unknown fuel systems in buildings out here that our fire department is unaware of.
and we do get a lot of transient traffic through as well.
Mhm. And I talked to a pilot from Minnesota this weekend who happened to be here for the ball games. I asked him, I said, how do you decide where you're going to go get fuel? And I'm not going to be able to say the things that he said, but he said, I can pull it up on my cell phone and I can enter in blah, 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 blah. He says, and it will tell me what airports have fuel, what their fuel systems are, if they're credit card capable. And he named off a half a dozen different things that he said come off from this app. And he says, when I fly from the middle of Minnesota, he says, I need to know where I'm going to get fuel next. And he said, we have to plan our flights that way. He says, and I really hate it. He said, when I have to go 30 minutes out of the way to fuel up and then 30 minutes to come back to be back on course again. He said, so as pilots, we really pay attention to where we're going to get fuel and how soon we can get in and get out, unless that's our destination. So. Questions, comments?
It's just my comment would be, it's probably at least time to start the process of finding out what's out there and at least the available options or what has to happen. You know, you have suggestions from an engineer that looked at all this stuff. You should probably have someone actually physically inspect the tanks. They'll have to pull the caps off and check them and look for, actually test the quality of the tanks. They can do all that stuff, because actually 30-year-old tanks aren't that old. I don't know, there may be different airplane specifications, but there's a lot of tanks in this town that are that old and older that aren't probably necessarily a concern. But you'd want to certainly run all that stuff down.
Well, like on the jet fuel one, I can tell you right now, there's supposed to be a filter between the actual tank and where they pump in the fuel
Yep.
to the tank, and there is not one. And that alone is $16,000 to put that in.
The other thing is too, and I'm looking at the picture here too, one of the things he commented on, where we fill the tanks currently is outside of the containment area. That does have to change. It has to be,
At the
everything has
time you
to.
start updating any of this, all of it will have to be contained.
Exactly,
Correct.
exactly.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I'll just throw out a couple of comments. One is, I guess, first off is, Jen, do we have a reserve for the airport board fuel system
We
at
do
all?
not. We have an airport reserve, which we have worked really hard on for many years to put the dollars in on an annual basis to pay for the airport projects.
Okay.
It is a reserve that could be tapped. I hate to see that personally.
Yeah, because that airport reserve has been for the
Airport
taxiway and other improvements. Chad's got a whole big list of them that don't come any cheaper than this thing. So I guess I'm a little disappointed that, we've known for 30 years that this thing is gonna fail. It's kinda like not putting together reserve for, any of our other assets that we have, I guess. So we think as a commission, we need to make sure during budget season, we take a look at maybe all of our assets throughout the community as well, and make sure we don't get caught with a $30,000 bill unbudgeted, is basically what we're looking at here. So, that we need to look at. Definitely, I'll echo what Commissioner Abraham said. I can't say that this is a good thing or a bad thing until I know the numbers, and the numbers are accurate. You're throwing out from 80,000 to 300,000.
Correct.
I'm not gonna make a call on that.
No, I understand
And,
that.
I don't disagree. I think, Mayor, I think you've done some good research on it, and, but at the same time, we need to be able to look at that. We need to look at the right numbers, and we gotta figure out how to pay for this. And I don't disagree that it's something that's needed. You're absolutely right. One fuel system over, we get 30 hangars out there with their own barrels of spilling all over and everything else.
And some of
we
that's
don't-
probably occurring already.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
No, not yet, but it's been threatened.
Well, you can go around
I know
town
one of
and-
them has it, because I put it together.
Yeah. You can go around town and see that in other places as well, but, so we and as far as like the need of having a good airport, I know this is, well-known airport board continues to work on that, but at the same time, we also need to look at it as a commission. Do we need to be in the gas business? Are we a service station business? Is that a yes or a no? If that's a no, how do you privatize it? And I think all of that stuff needs to be on the table, and I'll challenge the airport board to come back with their recommendations and Abraham as the liaison, got a lot of work in front of you. That's gonna be a busy, busy board to really dig into this and come back with good, solid, firm recommendations. And so that's kind of a little bit of a challenge, but yet I think that's some of the things we as a commission need to do. We need to throw that all on the table and look at all of that right now. And for the finance office, you know, are we making $50 a year on this? We making $100,000 a year on, you know, what, if it's a huge cash cow for us, then yeah, maybe we will stay in the business. But if it's a pain in the butt and we got a, you know, $300,000 bill, or, you know, every 20 to 30 years, it's probably not worth it for us. But we need to look at all of that, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, so.
I don't know if cash cow is the right word.
Yeah.
Maybe
What word
it's
would you
Source
use?
of revenue.
a resource to help pay for the upgrades at the airport.
At
Because,
least,
yeah.
at minimal, it should pay
We d-
for
we
the
don't-
tanks.
Right, we're not making money on the airport. It is an asset to the community, but it costs us money out of the general budget. But it would be nice if we could find a fuel system where it would add to and not contribute to the problem, I guess. The fuel system's gonna need to pay for itself one way or the other, I guess, before it dies and we need to replace the new one, so that's something to keep in mind.
Well, the other thing that's interesting too is, you know, unless you spend some time at the airport, which, and I've spent very little, but when you're talking to the businesses around the community, the airport actually generates a lot more dollars to the community than we really recognize. You don't see those people who fly in and go visit their companies, or, you know, come here for meetings and that, and then fly back out again. We don't see, you know, unless you're standing out there looking at the sky, you know, you just don't really see it, you know. But it is one of those things that, yes, it's an expense to us on one side of the sheet, but it brings in indirect revenue, and that through sales tax and, you know, other things and that happen within the community. So it is a definite asset, and I'm not sure, but what's the neighborhood of the upgrade that we're doing with the FAA funding for the taxiway?
Parallel taxiway.
What's the parallel taxiway? Just,
Total on that.
you know, I'm not looking for exact dollars, but I mean,
That we budgeted.
what would be the total project cost?
The current estimate for the construction is about 3.2 million,
3.2 million?
and the city would pay between 4 and 5 and 6% of that.
Okay.
And that's what that reserve. we're
Sure,
talking about
sure.
earlier.
But I mean, that's just adding the parallel taxiway, which is gonna make our airport that much more user-friendly. You know, and that's 3.2 million, and so, you know, I'm not saying what we should do and that, but I do believe that now is the time to start the process of looking into where we are and where we need to be going.
At least then you'll have numbers to
Yeah.
look at. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't budget for something.
Can't budget
that's
for what you
between
don't know.
$80,000 and $300,000. That's just,
It's a big gap.
Right.
I-
Chad?
I just have a couple questions. How it's been explained to me is that in July, we might be done selling fuel,
August.
August.
when they
August?
come around, recertify it if it fails.
Right.
Yes.
The
Correct.
pumps fail, we're done.
And so I don't know the timeline for this, and it's not fair, but
Yeah.
I'd be the first to admit, to tell the commission, you need to decide something right away so we can get a fuel system in by the end of the year. But the reality is to put this into place, if it is going to be put into place, a decision would have to be made
Rather
somewhat
soon.
sooner than later.
Yes.
Well,
And this does.
they already informed you that if you ordered one today, it's still 7 to 8 months out, correct?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Right.
But even if we, you know, at this point in time, we know where, vaguely where we are. But at least if we are given some direction to look into some different fuel systems, we can see what options are there. And then maybe in a week or two, have something to present and say, you know, in my own mind, 30-year-old tanks may be okay. I'm not comfortable with that for someone who's up there. I would be more comfortable for that if these tanks were, yes, used for gasoline for vehicles driving down the road or something like that, you know, where when you have an issue and a breakdown, you've got someplace to pull off and stop. The other thing that I look at too, we have planes that come and go out here, $500,000 and up, not uncommon. Not uncommon at all. So, you know, there's, to me, the airport is different than, you know, a farmer's tanks or you know, an old service station tanks or something like that. To me, an airport is different.
I don't think anybody disagrees or with that logic and things, but if you look at other airports across the state, they may have 40-year-old tanks. I mean, that's not for me to say that tank is good or not good. Somebody who
Right.
certifies them, that's
And
their job to.
those people are
to-
readily available that
Yeah.
can come in and do
But-
that for you, and
Where I'm struggling with is, you know, nobody likes surprise expenses, and I guess
Right,
I'm a little
exactly.
disappointed that, you know, I'm looking at a $300,000 decision of an unbudgeted expense that I didn't know about and/or somebody didn't inform the commission about years ahead, even 2 years, 3 years, to
Well,
give
the
us
city's only
a.
owned it for 3 years, so before that, it was privately owned, and that's what they
and
used.
Understand that.
So this is, you know,
Yep, and that's kind of exactly where I'm coming from, is that, you know, we need to have reserves, and this is gonna be a fun budget year. So, but, you know,
So is the airport board gonna be looking at alternatives, or is this your proposal?
Well, we're gonna research that U fuel system to see if that's, have the same capabilities at a more, user-friendly price. And that's for sure, we're gonna do that. I'm gonna start that process tomorrow, but, as a board, we're just here to, I guess, to reinforce the information that KLJ's been the driving, engineering firm for the, airport. I know that's 3-year renewable contracts, and they've been here how many years, Chad? It's been quite some time.
Probably, well, 10 years since I've been here, and they've been the airport engine
We've
consultant.
always had, I mean, if we want to have Brian at a meeting, he'll drive down from Fargo at a heartbeat. So, I mean, he's very, very supportive of Madison Airport. And if we wanted him at a commission meeting, I think
Yeah.
KLJ has been at 2 commission meetings in the
Right.
past too.
Yep.
And, so it's a lot of money, yeah, but everything has a useful life too. So we're just here to, try to present the facts.
so what exactly would you need from us at this point? I mean, obviously, we're not gonna make any motions or
No.
anything, do we just
We
say
just wanted to-
I think just to go
proceed?
ahead to research it, you know,
Go
find
for it,
out.
airport board, and
Yeah.
Find,
Recommendation to move forward with additional information, I guess, at this point would be adequate.
I think, if I may, I feel pretty confident, and I think KLJ does as well, in the price for the new system. You know, we talk about the unknowns, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
but
Uh,
she said it was 80,000.
KLJ feels comfortable. I've never heard of the
Okay.
80,000 before, and this is a full system, right?
and
It's gotta be
that's for a
bid.
for 2 dispenser, credit card active.
From
Yeah.
what I understand,
With KLJ, yeah,
it'd
it's,
be 80,000 for the jet one and 80,000 for the avgas one. That would be the tank.
now we're up
So
to-
it's actually
now we're up to
160.
160.
And then the,
Another 30 or 40,000 for the pumps and the card.
well, and the card reader's separate.
Right.
Okay, so
No,
now
the
we're
pumps,
right up
the
to.
pumps.
So
are
you're
all
really
part of
talking
that
200.
80,000. The pumps, the reels, the tank, all that is 80,000.
You're gonna slide in a skid with a pump and a hose and a tank, but you're still gonna have to have a credit card system, so you're talking 80,000 for jet, 80,000 for avgas, and still need the $30,000 brain that you don't get around wherever you go, so that's 200,000,
And
not
10 grand
not
to take
80.
the old one out.
You probably.
Yeah.
So that.
Either way, we're still, see all the work we're helping your airport board out?
I mean, we're really,
See, I'm working.
80 sounded
Kick back
great,
now.
but realistically, it's 200 to get to the same, I mean,
And the one they did in
Start
North
pulling
Dakota,
that
he
back
said
out.
was
Right.
250, it was all self-contained. Two tanks, and those were 12,000 gallon tanks. He felt that out down here that we
We
would
probably
get
don't
by
need
with
that.
6,
Yes, 12s are.
with
huge.
6,000.
Yep.
Gallon
only need
tanks.
6.
So, but then you've got your groundwork to do and things like that. And, you know, the other thing is that we've got a little bit of ground there to the west of the end of the runway, and the initial recommendation was to move these south to kind of center them so the planes could, you know, kind of come around. I'd like to see the new system set in even a little further west because of the building.
Right.
Because the tanks were there first, then that building was built, and everything is too close to the building. If they were set further, yes, we'd have some additional blacktop work and that to do around it, but it would make it much safer and that, and for fueling and.
Because it's kind of up in the corner, near the building, so you can only get one airplane up there at a time, and you're really close to the building,
And you have to-
especially with a small jet
Yeah, and you have to push them back.
or a King Air. That's really close to the building.
Mhm.
And those tanks are really close to the building. If those tanks went, the building's gonna go.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think if you're
Lots gonna go.
interested in it sounds like a recommendation or some research, so to speak, from the airport board. I don't know, I don't have the foggiest, quite honestly, about who you're gonna get to come in and inspect tanks and refine some of the unknowns, because the unknowns go with this 200,000, the reusal of the tank. Okay, to refine those, maybe that can be done before the next airport board meeting, and the airport board can take up KLJ's recommendation with the new system, and maybe they'll be refined with the reusing of the tanks with the old system, and the airport board, what I'm hearing is you want a recommendation from them at their next meeting, at minimum,
Yeah.
before this comes back to the city commission.
If I'm not mistaken, this ODA equipment number from December 15th of 2014 was basically that. That was a new dispenser with credit cards, still using the old tanks, so.
And that very well could be. The thing is that, I think O'Day, I just don't know. I didn't ask for that proposal. Was it a standalone or what? This has to be bid, first of all. You
Yes.
gotta create a set of specs.
Yeah.
Was that just supplying the information? Does that include this concrete around the base? Does that include, what does it include, what does it not include? You know, what I'm telling you is, from reading this and from the conversation with KLJ, is I believe that the 280 accounts for those things. The 136 and whatever, maybe, you know, the control systems and the 80,000, in here it's 40 to 50,000 dollars for the tanks are included in that, so, I'm not sure about those other ones. But I think.
Tough job in front of you. That's the best I can say is for the airport board, and, you know, I know you guys on the airport board, I got confidence in you in your abilities, but this is exactly like Chad said, when we're bidding this thing, we need to make sure that you're not getting some cheap $80,000 thing that's gonna break and fall apart. And does it have cement, doesn't have cement? We moving these tanks out, what are we doing with these SDSU tanks and everything else that goes along with that? That's
All these
huge.
things will have some value, but probably
Yeah,
not much after you the cost of moving them.
and, yeah, and as long as all of that's as part of the bid and everything, so come back with a recommendation, I guess, is,
Very good. Yeah, that was the reason, you know, for bringing it up, was because we've got the inspection coming up, and, you know, from just, you know, what we've been working with here, and that, you know, things are getting worn out. And so it's time to be moving forward with the process, and so, all right, there's no motion necessary on that, we've discussed it. Number 4, you have attached bills for approval.
Make a motion to approve the bills.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You also have attached bills for ratification.
make a motion, we approve the bills for ratification.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You also have attached some personnel adjustments.
Make a motion to approve.
Adjustments.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are now in executive session.
Thank you, board members.